November 23, new and surprising developments continue to emerge. After this series of strange outgassing phenomena we have witnessed, and all of them only make the overall picture more mysterious than ever. From the very first images released, I recognized the appearance of multiple objects even before the clearer frames of the images that were supposed to represent. Spacecraft-like structures were widely circulated on the internet. Now, as the amount of material continues to increase day by day, we are facing an ever-expanding mystery. The new images are not only sharper, but also force the observer to admit that this is the movement of multiple independent objects in space and cannot be explained by the phenomenon of ordinary light interference. According to current orbital data, Atlas is positioned to cross the orbit of Mars. The red planet is currently inside the red circle, marking its orbit, while Earth is on the opposite side. The entire structure appears to be pulled up into the ecliptic plane, a detail that has many observers questioning the possibility of some form of intentional orientation. This certainly raises the possibility of extraterrestrial technology, especially as the shapes and movements of the objects continue to suggest patterns unlike any known natural phenomenon. Although no official conclusions have been reached, the increasingly dense series of images and data is opening up a story that is forcing the scientific community to closely monitor. It is not impossible that we are witnessing a previously unrecorded cosmic phenomenon, or even something beyond the ordinary imagination. And again, something remarkable happened. I'll present some relevant data, because even during the outgassing that took place in this region, at a time when Atlas had not yet reached Mars orbit, images of the entire event show that its orbit shifted. The shift was small, perhaps only a degree or less, but enough to make a difference. Before the outgassing, Atlas must have been very far away from Jupiter. When it approached that region, Jupiter must have been moving forward, and Atlas must have been behind, not significantly affected by the gas giant's gravity. But that changed during the outgassing. This phenomenon is described as an object entering Jupiter's psychological gravitational circle, a region some observers refer to as Jupiter's heel. Anything that enters this sphere of influence comes directly under Jupiter's gravitational influence, and this time, Atlas moved from the sun's sphere of influence into Jupiter's. The vast space between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter is filled with a remnant asteroid belt that many researchers believe was once the fifth planet of the solar system. After countless collisions in the chaotic early stages of the interplanetary system, this debris settled into the current belt, much of it held in place by Jupiter's powerful gravity. Without this pull, asteroids would have flooded into the inner system with much greater frequency. Occasionally, we still see a few fragments escape and become meteorites that hit Earth, but that's just a small fraction. Now, amid the unpredictable fluctuations in Atlas's motion, tracking every shift on the orbital map has become more important than ever. In the latest simulation, updated to December 9, Jupiter continues to advance steadily on its path, while Atlas appears to be veering far enough behind the giant planet to avoid direct gravitational influence. But the story gets more interesting. From that seemingly safe spot, as new images are analyzed, the truth gradually emerges. Atlas is well within Jupiter's heel, or gravitational influence of Jupiter. And the question immediately arises, how did Atlas release gas at just the right time, in just the right place, and with enough intensity to correct its orbit, bringing itself into the giant planet's gravitational zone? If the previous hypotheses are correct, that Atlas is not a single object, but a complex of structures, what are the implications of this? These questions take the whole mystery to a whole new level. In the newly reprocessed images, a distinct bright structure emerges, possibly the core object. It is surrounded by faint halos that look like shields or force fields, and within these halos are small, bright spots like companion objects. Remarkably, this pattern is not unique. Many other documents have shown the same pattern over and over again. One prominent case that was once considered the most convincing, an image so sharp it clearly depicts a mechanical structure resembling a ship, has not received the attention it deserves. I sent it to Avi and several experts, but because of its exceptional clarity, they may have worried that it was a fake. Now, as multiple independent observational systems with different types of cameras and telescopes have begun to record compatible data, this view seems to be changing. In advanced processing, as the light around the central cluster is isolated, small points of light can be counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, as if part of a shielding covering the entire system. Combined with the irregular outflows and the unpredictable trajectory of Atlas, a big question arises. Where exactly are these outflows coming from? Is this a coordinated action of the entire group of objects? Or is it just a central core maneuvering to generate propulsion? Either way, what is striking is that the entire system seems to maintain a steady pattern of motion as if operating under a pre-established mechanism. When the team flipped the brightness, brightening the dark areas and darkening the bright spots, the highlights appeared with unprecedented contrast. All the extraneous detail disappeared, leaving only the structure of the region identified as 3I Atlas, a darker, denser center, while the surrounding bright spots were so distinct they could barely be called noise. And the thing is, this pattern isn't new. Similar structures have been seen many times before. All this accumulated data is gradually painting a story that science can no longer ignore, a story of a system of synchronized objects, of strange force fields, of regulated outflows, and of the possibility that Atlas is more than just a lifeless mass drifting through the solar system. We may be on the verge of a phenomenon that has been hidden for too long, or something that someone doesn't want humanity to discover too soon. Data from another telescope also supported this picture. In that observation, 4 frames were superimposed on each other, and the result was undeniable, multiple, separate objects appearing simultaneously. The analysts used the same method I had used, darkening the entire field of view, then gradually increasing the brightness until the structures began to emerge with a little more brightness. The background stars and sky came back into view, but the objects stood out at all brightness levels, unobscured. Again, this was the same pattern as in the videos that were supposed to depict a fleet. Another image, though dimmer, and from a completely different telescope, offers a unique perspective. The outgassing has now largely ceased, allowing the central core to emerge more clearly, a bright central region with numerous small bright points rotating in roughly fixed positions. This center is known as the nucleus, while the other bright points may be suborbital objects. Some observers have suggested that the entire structure is rotating, either the core itself or satellite objects orbiting it, creating the unusual shape seen in the image. Whatever the model, the geometry is so strange that it does not match any known natural phenomenon in astrophysics. Data sets from multiple independent sources are piecing together a picture that defies classical explanations. And if multiple objects are indeed moving in unison around a central core, the biggest question now is, are we witnessing a rare astronomical coincidence or the sign of an organized structure that science has yet to name? But this is the real three. Atlas, when the data is processed by zooming out to increase contrast, darkening the background, and then gradually pulling the light back in, the patterns hidden behind the noise curtain appear with a surprising consistency. The bright center stands out clearly. The lower area is brighter as a separate area of activity, and around it are small objects embedded in a force field that covers the entire structure. What is strange is that all of these details match exactly the description in the video that is supposed to show a fleet moving through space. When processing the panorama, I increased the brightness of the hotspots to bring out the details. The result is a structure whose overall size is too impressive to ignore. The lower part looks like a navigation area or an operations center, while the front part takes on the shape of a shield. Viewed from above, the entire structure feels like a giant space station, with many objects moving in unison through space in a clear and organized pattern. As observation teams continue to decipher this data, new information from Avi Loeb about 3 Atlas's trajectory changes adds to the puzzle. While these descriptions are largely based on image analysis and observations, the fact that multiple independent telescopes have observed the same recurring pattern makes it increasingly difficult to rule out a unified multi-object structure. The objects appear to be in the same field, have a protective shield-like head, and repeatedly make mysterious adjustments in a certain direction as if following a predetermined goal or routine. On a broader scale, the entire unusual structure is reminiscent of ancient descriptions of celestial armies that have been mentioned in many civilizations. Similar accounts appear in the Bible, in ancient texts from the Middle East, Asia, the Americas, and even in myths from cultures that have no connection to each other. The uncanny resemblance between the shapes observed today and the ancient descriptions makes the story all the more difficult to ignore. Are we witnessing a phenomenon that our ancestors saw and tried to pass on? Or is it all just a rare cosmic coincidence? Whatever. The answer, 3. Atlas is forcing modern science to confront questions that humanity has been asking for thousands of years. In his latest analysis, he makes a remarkable hypothesis. If 3 Atlas is indeed a mothership, a structure designed to observe Jupiter using advanced technology, what is the farthest distance such an interstellar object could reach and still remain stable around Jupiter? This is an important technical question. And while I've mentioned it before, it's worth revisiting the key numbers. To perform its surveillance role, 3 Atlas must enter a region called the Hill Radius, where Jupiter's gravity is stronger than the Sun's. Within this hill zone, any object with a relatively low velocity can be trapped by Jupiter, similar to how Earth binds the Moon. This is a delicate dynamic equilibrium. An object is close enough to be under Jupiter's control, but still not ejected from its orbit by the Sun. This leads to a clear conclusion. If 3 Atlas enters Jupiter's hill zone, it can maintain a relatively stable position to observe or execute the mission it was designed for. Conversely, if it passes beyond the edge of the hill zone, the gravitational balance will be lost, and it will slowly be pulled by the Sun toward the center of the solar system in a spiral orbit. This concept raises a question that cannot be ignored if 3 Atlas is actively adjusting its course to enter Jupiter's gravitational zone. Is this a deliberate move? And if it is an artificial structure, as many details in the data suggest, is it there to observe, to study, or to carry out an entirely different mission that we are not yet able to speculate about these seemingly purely technical calculations? When placed alongside the recent series of images and unusual movements, create a scenario that goes far beyond the familiar assumptions of traditional science. According to the latest predictions, 3. Atlas will make its closest approach to Jupiter on March 16, 2026. This means that there are less than 4 months left before the interstellar object's most important moment. At that time, the distance between Jupiter and the Sun is estimated to be about 783.8 million kilometers. And a tiny adjustment in 3, Atlas's orbit has brought it exactly there. As if by some kind of intentional guidance, the distance to the perigee was determined using NASA's JPL Horizon system, which uses data from about 230 observatories around the world. The sector scan method, which allows 3 Atlas's direction and velocity to be determined from daily images, is what detected the recent change in Atlas's orbit. Although the change is small, it occurred at a sensitive time when the object was approaching Jupiter's strong gravitational field, raising the question of whether it was a coincidence or a deliberate navigational maneuver. As March 2026 approaches, the story of 3I Atlas becomes more uncertain. New analysis shows that its microgravity acceleration values have changed, suggesting that the previously observed anomalous thrust has shifted. Its orbit, which was only expected to curve slightly after Atlas completes its orbit around the Sun, is now more off-kilter than expected. Avi Loeb has long assumed that 3I Atlas, entering the solar system counterclockwise, would inevitably create gravitational disturbances, but if the system structure or part of it were to be ripped apart and fall into Jupiter's orbit, gravity would do the rest without expending energy, opening up the possibility that this was a deliberate maneuver. The most remarkable thing about the new calculations is that, with an error of just 1 standard deviation, the recorded agreement is about 0 million kilometers. Steve Fairfax was the first to discover this near-perfect agreement. At the same time, the microgravity acceleration tracked over a month around perihelion varied by only about 0 million kilometers. This suggests that the microgravity acceleration itself created a small but extremely precise orbital correction, enough to nudge 3I Atlas's path straight into Jupiter's Hill radius. The Hill radius is the region where Jupiter's gravity overcomes the Sun's pull, becoming the region that completely dominates the movement of intruding objects. The fact that 3I Atlas aligned itself so precisely to fall right into this region surprised many researchers, as the probability of a natural interstellar object performing such a delicate deflection is almost impossible. The perfect combination of gravity-free acceleration, orbit changes after perihelion, and Atlas's eventual descent into Jupiter's strongest influence raises questions beyond what conventional celestial mechanics can explain, forcing researchers to consider whether we are witnessing a rare natural phenomenon or a form of sophisticated navigation that belongs to a system far more complex than humanity has ever understood. According to the latest calculations, a remarkable coincidence appeared in the data. The obtained value, with an error of only 1 standard deviation, corresponded to 0.06 million kilometers Avi Loeb said it was Steve Fairfax who first discovered this near-perfect match. Meanwhile, the value of 3I Atlas's anti-gravity acceleration, that is, the acceleration not due to gravity but due to the object itself, observed continuously for a month as it moved near perihelion behind the sun, also fluctuated by only about 1 million kilometers. This suggests that the minimal shift in distance